This is an update of the story titled I'm Married to My Father and Have 3 Children with Him. So after discovering that horrible news about my identity, I just sat by the box in the room and all I did was to cry. A few days before we left for the United States with my children, one of my uncle's children decided to take me sightseeing, and I was pleasantly surprised about how much the country has developed in terms of infrastructure since I last saw it. But while we went sightseeing, my uncle called to tell me that he brought me some foodstuff since I told him that we'll be going back to the United States soon. I then told him to put the items in the room, but what I forgot was that I left the letter that Grandma wrote to me on a table in the room. My uncle, after dropping the items, saw the letter and other papers that were lying on the floor when he entered the room, and out of curiosity, he decided to read the letter, and that was how he also got to know about my father. But wait, the story is just about to start. According to my uncle, he wasn't just shocked about my husband also being my father, but he was shocked to discover that Grandma lied to me about my mom dying a few days after I was born in that letter. According to him, when I was about 8 months old, my grandma made an arrangement for my mom to travel to the UK in order to further her education there. But for some strange reasons, when she got there, they got very little information about her since it was only Grandma that she was communicating with. Then my uncle further explained that Grandma told them that after my mom's education, she got married to a German man, but unfortunately she lost her life while she was going to give birth to her child, and she had since been buried there. At this point, I began to get worried as to why Grandma would lie about my mom even into her grave. At this point, I felt there's more to this story and I was prepared to dig every single length of it. Something tells me that Grandma could as well lie to my uncles about my mom's death, and it is possible that my mom is still alive and living somewhere out there. My uncle then advised that I inform my dad, who is also my husband now, and then end the marriage as soon as possible because it was a taboo in their tribe, which I agreed, and subsequently I left for the US with my children. When I got to the US, my husband, who is also my father, was very happy to see us and wanted to do what married people do, but I refused and pretended to be sick. I later on secretly took his hair and some fluid from his body for the DNA, and now the result is in. Sadly, the result turned out to be positive. My husband is indeed my biological father. I cried all night. Fortunately, at the time that I received the results, he was out of town for a business trip, so I was thinking of the best way to break the news to him when he returns. My uncle, on the other hand, was calling every now and then to tell me to tell my husband as soon as possible in order to prevent getting intimate with him once again. So long story short, when my husband came back from his business trip, I gathered courage and told him everything that I discovered when I went back to Africa. After hearing the news, he was shocked, angry, and confused at the same time, but he said he wanted to make sure that I was indeed his daughter, so he conducted another DNA test and the results came out positive. That week in our house was as though someone died. We both cried for weeks. Fortunately, all of our children were in the boarding house, so they didn't get to see our miserable state while we were going through that difficult phase. My husband, who is also my dad now, said that we should not tell the children yet because it would be too much for their mental health, so we kept it away from them. Now, the problem is that I have a strong feeling that Grandma equally lied to my uncles and aunties about my mother's death, and it is possible that my mom could be out there in the world. So my dad and I hired a private investigator to find my mom. In fact, the search was really difficult because we have no information about which part of the UK they lived or where they even worked. So painfully, we felt that the only way that we could find her was to use television station, although we didn't put out the entire story out there. Fortunately, a few weeks after putting the information on national television about her whereabouts, we got a few calls from different people who said they knew her. What? My mom is still alive? I was extremely excited upon hearing that she is still alive. So we quickly made an arrangement to meet her, and when we finally met her, it was a collection of so many emotions for all of us that day. Yes, indeed, she's quite old now, but I was extremely happy to see her. She was equally happy to see me, but she was reluctant to hug or embrace my dad. We later learned that Grandma told my mom that my dad denied the pregnancy and also refused to see her. So after she had given birth to me and got the opportunity to travel to the UK, she did that without looking back. She went on to say that the baby died a few months after she traveled to the UK, which means that essentially I died. She even sent photos of the dead baby to her later on. My mom later said that Grandma also told her about how her siblings were always talking ill of her, calling her a bad girl, so she decided to completely cut them off, and that was why she never got in touch with my uncles and aunties. My dad at this point told her that he did everything in his power to see her and the child, but Grandma refused to allow him. Then one day when he came to the house in an attempt to see her and the child, Grandma told him that the baby had died, and that was why he stopped visiting the house. My question now is, what was Grandma's reason for doing all that? I guess none of us will ever get the answers because she obviously took the answers to the question to her grave. And I got to meet my other siblings with my mom's German husband. Unfortunately, my mom's German husband has died, so I never got to meet him. I have since divorced my husband and he has moved on with his life. Our children are completely surprised and keep asking as to why we are divorced, but my dad still insists that we should not tell them yet. I have united with my mom and I'm very happy. But each time that I set my eyes on my children, who happen to be my siblings, I feel a sharp pain in my heart. Why would Grandma do this to us?